Welcome to the first part of a four-part videocast covering Power Metal Resources, epic code POW. Chief Executive Paul Johnson joins me to discuss the various components of the business, including the spin-out projects, exploration, group strategy, and financing. Hello, Paul. How are you today?
Very good, Alan. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good indeed. So this is part one. We're covering the group spin-out projects, and straight off, I'm going to bring up our first slide to look at, which people will see us sitting behind, but you can see the four projects on the screen. We know Golden Metal Resources is, of course, the first to be listed. That's scheduled for April. Can you talk us through Golden Metal and New Ballarat? And the other two projects, please, Paul?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at that global map in front of you and you look at the number of metals targeted, the number of project packages that we have in play, this is clearly way too big for one single organization to manage on a medium or long-term basis. And what we decided to do early in the process is recognize with Power Metal the way to create value in the junior resource space, as in other cyclical sectors, is to take as many positions as you can in projects and in companies running projects whilst the sectors are deflated. And then when everything turns around and goes positive again, you have a vast array of exposure to so many different things, most of which you brought in at very cost-effective levels when the markets were a little bit deflated. So if you take our package with New Ballarat Gold, we have a 49.9% stake, the other 50.1% held by Red Rock Resources PLC. And that package was created in the midst of the COVID gloom of early 2020, when we secured a substantial number of license applications, 16 in total, in the Victoria Goldfields area of Australia. And that really gave us one of the largest footprints in a hugely prospective gold territory that now, as we have increasingly granted license ground, over 1,500 square kilometres, we have exploration on the ground with a drill program happening right now. We have a major project within our business, and one that has really cost us a very modest amount of money. And the trick with bringing these packages into the business for spin out is that we have a very clearly defined project, very clearly defined structure, and something that is easily portable into its own separate vehicle and then listed as a separate identity. Now, another example is Golden Metal, as you rightly say, that's moving through the process now quite rapidly with weekly meetings and lots of administrative stuff happening. But that's a package in Nevada, USA, focused around the Pilot Mountain tungsten project with a very substantial tungsten resource. And also three other projects, Golconda, Garfield and Stonewall, that add gold-based metals into the overall package. First development is in the Patterson region, just up the road from the fantastic discovery Javieron by Greatland Gold, and First Class Metals focused on the Hemlo-Schreiber region, where we vended our interests in to that company, and we have a circa 36% stake in the business as it stands today. All of those packages going into listings in the London capital markets.
Okay, and there are 10 metals involved with those projects overall, as was illustrated on the slide there. But I said at the start, of course, Golden Metal is the first project to come to market, or the first spin-out project to come to market, and we have a specific slide for Golden Metal here. So, of course, this includes the Pilot Mountain project acquired from Thor. Can you talk us through this, please, Paul?
Yeah, sure. So Pilot Mountain was acquired. Well, the deal was originally signed, the option agreement, in August 2021, and we finally crystallized back end of October, early November 2021, exercised that option, should I say. And we've been working to do the transfers and all the various work that's necessary when you acquire a major project. This is, for Power Metal, our largest acquisition that we've undertaken to date. I think it's indicative of the type of acquisition we will be looking to do in the future, if I'm honest, as the size and scale of the business grows. Not perhaps now when our share price is languishing quite low. We don't want to use our equity at this point, but when our share price is much higher, then it gives us a currency to do this type of transactional work. And if you look at the Gold and Metal Resources pilot mounted interest, you see a very clearly defined project that has an existing JORC compliant resource, a very substantial JORC compliant resource with copper, zinc and silver credits alongside. And you see something that from our perspective is extremely scalable. We understand that project well. We know what we're targeting with an increase in the resource of tungsten itself, and also looking for a major copper discovery in addition to build on top of the copper work that's been done in the past. And we think as a package with Pilot Mountain at the core, the Gold and Metal Resources business listed in London will draw a lot of investor interest. And that's absolutely crucial to us. We cannot have vehicles going onto the market as new IPOs without people understanding what they're trying to achieve, what the upside potential is, and then really engaging with the story. I remember for my 12 or 13 years focused on the natural resource space, when good quality North American vehicles or projects hit the London market, they do draw an awful lot of interest, Alan.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for that, Paul. That ends part one of our look at Power Metal Resources spin-out projects. Join us for part two, where we look at the exploration work being undertaken by the company. Welcome to the second part of a four-part videocast covering Power Metal Resources, epic code POW. Chief Executive Paul Johnson joins me once again to discuss the components of the business, which include the spin-out projects discussed yesterday. Today we're discussing exploration. Tomorrow we'll be discussing financing, and the day after that, group strategy. Hello again, Paul. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks, Alan. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good. So we're looking at the exploration projects that the company are currently engaged in. So first of all, I'm going to bring up a slide which just shows you geographically across the world. Can you take us through this?
Yeah, sure. Well, as we said yesterday, some of our project packages are moving into their own listed vehicles, and we have effectively 4 of those in process right now. The rest of our business is made up of exploration, our own internal in-house exploration. And our key in terms of the acquisition, because you need the projects on the books to explore, our key with acquisition is to give our shareholders diversification. And that's all about risk management. If you're operational in 1 or 2 commodities and 1 or 2 jurisdictions, you have significant exposure. As shareholders and myself as a private investor over the years, I've not really been that focused on the risks that come with having a very narrow business model. So we decided with Power we wanted a grand business model, and so we would go across the globe, and we're in North America, Africa and Australia. We're across multiple commodities, and we're not going to be chasing the latest hot commodity as a business strategy, but we do need to be aware that having that broad exposure is important. And making sure that our exploration work does cover jurisdictions, does cover different commodities, and really gives us the best possible chance of riding the wave of the markets, yes, but also finding the commodities in the right places where people will recognize the value that's generated and build that into our share price and our market valuation.
Okay, so we've looked at the geographical spread of the projects there. Now here are all of the projects in more detail. Can you talk us through these, please, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. Now, the intriguing thing is that's not all of the projects. There's actually some of them. But I do run this business in many respects, just like I think a private investor would want it to be run, because I am one myself. And that's, I want to see activity. I want to see a business that's pushing ahead hard and trying to achieve something with its money raised and plowing it into the ground. Now, when we, as we'll see when we talk about the overall business in one of the later sessions, we have a an approach that brings projects into our business. We undertake initial exploration almost immediately, and very often as part of the due diligence process. You'll notice that if you read some of the announcements, you'll see they were actually doing work that would normally be something you would do on a project you already own, but we're doing it as part of the DD. And we're trying in those early stages to get as much information as we can about these projects before we start to sink the bigger sums later on. We also actually do that with our spin-out project packages. When we bring the projects in, we look at them straight away and we do initial exploration. And the key behind this is that there are, I think, two main stages in the life of a project when it gets a big uplift in valuation. One is early stage work, when that piece of ground demonstrates prospective potential with an early exploration program, you get a big uplift in value. And the second one is when you get that discovery on the patch of ground, that's another big uplift in value. So we're capturing uplift one, as it were, with this early stage work. And then, of course, with that knowledge, Alan, we move into, do we want to move this into a spin out? Do we want to take this forward internally, and that kind of discussion? But we're not doing it from a low valuation base. We're doing it from a more substantial valuation base.
Understood, Paul. Well, thank you for that insight into the exploration currently underway with the business. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at group finance, and after that, we'll be looking at strategy. Meanwhile, Paul Johnson, CEO, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Alan.
Welcome to the third part of a four-part video cast covering POW Metal Resources, Epic Code POW. Chief Executive Paul Johnson joins me once again to discuss the components of the business. We've, of course, looked already at the spin-out projects and exploration. Today, we're looking at financing, and in the final part, we'll be looking at the group strategy. So, Paul, welcome once again. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Alan. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're looking today at the group financing model. Of course, we've looked at the spin-outs and the exploration, and now you're going to tell us about how this is all structured and put together. So I'm going to bring up a slide for you to talk through. So over to you.
Yeah, I think it's about time that in our space we saw a few innovative models. The old-fashioned, traditional, decades-old model of raising finance from brokers, going cap in hand, getting cash, spending it on the ground, hoping that the sector will be buoyant and that you'll do something valuable so you can get more money. That's okay as a model. It's not inspirational. It's not going to put you in the most optimal position to make metal discoveries, and it's not going to be a business model that builds scale. I've watched the companies over the last 15 years and seen in the resource space and seen quite a few interesting models, some of which touch on elements of the business model that we have on the screen now. So Power acquires projects. We talked a little about that in the previous sessions. It does immediate exploration to take those projects up the value curve, or in some cases to dismiss projects because they're not as prospective as you might like. And then once we've got that information together, we've acquired an interest and we've done that initial work, we can make a decision. Do we want to put it into a spin out to create value for our business by taking a project package, putting it into its own vehicle and listing that vehicle, and in which Power Metal have a substantial stake? Or do we think it's more appropriate to take that project through our internal exploration? And we don't just have to do that by ourselves. We can also joint venture with partners while still keeping it as an internal exploration project. And that does two things for us. One, it means that we are constantly thinking ahead. We're funding and financing the business tomorrow by doing things today. Because as each vehicle spins out, and we get value on that spin out when it lists, and that business does a good job, hopefully the markets are reasonably buoyant too. then each one of those spin-outs could be worth a vast amount of money compared to our current working capital and compared to our current market cap. So if we're doing multiple spin-outs, multiple listings, the amount of working capital that we're generating for the business could be quite enormous. And we've talked about, if it gets too enormous, we are looking at distributions back to shareholders too. But then the money that's generated by those spin-outs and the confidence that's generated in our business and its strong balance sheet will enable this company to attract all sorts of interest and potentially finance at much higher levels than would be the case if we were simply cap in hand every month or every 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, like a typical junior going for working capital from brokers. So that's in essence where we're coming from with our financing.
Okay, that's great. And of course, we spoke about the spin-outs on Monday, but here we have examples of how the financing model is currently working and in action. Can you talk us through this, please, Paul?
Yeah, sure. So as a business, it's not just spin-outs that can generate us additional capital. It's also, we have an investment portfolio. And that's been really successful. And the investment portfolio has specific shares that we disclose, like Kavango Resources and Katoro. But it also has a junior resource investment fund behind it, where we don't talk about the individual companies. It's a pool of capital started with 75,000 that we've deployed in the market. Now, I know from my own experience in previous cycles, many investors actually make tens times their original money invested, and potentially you can make even more than that. So we thought, given that we are quite lowly valued, the sector as a whole, having a modest investment portfolio was a good idea. So we set up the Power Metal Junior Resource Investment Fund. On top of that, you've got the pre-IPO investments. So these are the spin-out vehicles or disposals that are going into their own listings. And there are 4 of them: New Ballarat Gold Corporation, Victoria, Australia; First Class Metals, Hemlo Schreiber, Ontario, Canada; Golden Metal Resources, Nevada, USA; and First Development Resources, focused on the Patterson and uranium rare earths projects, the CELTA project in the Northern Territory in Australia. Now, if you look at the valuations of those individual packages at the moment, we don't have one technically for New Ballarat Gold, but it's circa 2,300 square kilometres of total licence application and granted footprint in Victoria Goldfields. It's a valuable project package. But First Class Metals, our value is just over £1 million at the moment, and that vehicle's going into its own IPO listing hopefully very soon. Golden Metal Resources, we recently did the pre-IPO financing at a core valuation for Power Metal's interest of circa 3.25 million. And First Development Resources, we recently acquired an additional project, the CELTA project, and we did it for stock in FDR, giving Power Metal's core FDR holding a value of circa £2.5 million. So these are chunky sums because these are pre-IPO, and you would expect a reasonable but not crazy increase on listing. And if these business packages do the job, which they will, I believe, on listing, you can expect in a reasonable market potentially a considerable uplift in valuation. And I think most of these vehicles, potentially all of them, should be absolutely A-star business performers. They will do the right things. They will invest in the right projects. They will invest money in the ground. They will publish their findings and communicate the results to market. And they will do all the things that are needed to see an appreciation in share price and market value. Now, if you take that schedule, Alan, and you push forward 2 years, I think there may well be 2 or 3 pages like this, because we have other potential disposals and spin-outs that we can do from our very extensive package. And in fact, when you look at the entirety of our current business, and you look at the pipeline that's available to this business now, which most people don't see, there is a possibility for us to create multiple examples, additional opportunities to create value, and then build this portfolio over the next probably 12 to 18 months.
Excellent. That's a very exciting glimpse into the future there for the Power Metal business model. So Paul, once again, thank you for explaining that to us, and we look forward to speaking to you tomorrow to talk about group strategy.
Thanks, Alan.
Over the past few days, we've looked at the various components that go to make up the Power Metals business with Chief Executive Paul Johnson. We've looked at the spin-out projects, we've looked at exploration strategy, we've looked at financing for the group and how the business is financed going forward. Today, we're going to look into the future again and look at group strategy that's got Power Metals to where it is to date and what the group plan to do going forward. Hello again, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, it's very good, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good indeed. So we have two slides to look at here. Firstly, this one is looking at the various metals that you're engaged in exploring for. Can you talk us through the group strategy surrounding the metals you're looking for?
Yeah, I wanted really to make it clear that we are not your typical junior, that we are building something of scale through diversification, extremely focused business discipline, access to multiple projects, leveraging our quite modest, in fairness, financial strength. We're not a major, we're not a mid-tier, we are a junior, and we have millions available to deploy from a working capital perspective, but we don't have tens of millions yet. And we have to really fight like dogs to build our place in the market. We think that London companies should be more aspirational. We want to be a leading company, a global project company, covering a good diversified mix of interests in the metal space. So the metals under exploration, we've chosen precious, base, and strategic metals. That gives us operational flexibility. We will pick up the waves, of course, of those super popular metals from time to time. We think uranium will have a dramatic run. We think it started that dramatic run. We think that lithium, cobalt will be very valuable in the marketplace and continue to draw lots of investor interest. The big industrial metals, as we infrastructure up and go to the new green technology revolution, huge amounts of copper and nickel needed to enable that to happen. And then if you look at some of the more strategic and not quite exotic metals, but the likes of tungsten, where China has been the supplier of tungsten for a long period of time, and that's kind of coming to an end. And big places, the United States of America, are looking to develop homeland security for important metals such as tungsten. So we have that within the portfolio. And then, of course, we have the great precious metals in our business, gold and silver. To give people that assurance, that investment assurance, we think there'll be tremendous demand. So we kind of have it covered. That's a deliberate policy. There may well be more in the future, but at the moment, right now, we have a good broad spectrum approach with the metals.
Okay, Paul. So we now have a slide where we're looking at how you deploy the group strategy around the world. Can you talk us through this?
Yeah, our business started out back in 2019 when we restructured and refinanced with 3 projects in West and Central Africa, in the Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and the DRC. At the moment, we have one of those projects that we're investing money into, as it were. The push of our business as we've grown thereafter has been to not quite focus on secure destinations, but it's certainly been in the back of our mind to make sure that we allocate capital carefully. And in any junior exploration company, you need to have a good proportion of capital allocated into secure jurisdictions. Now, you see on the slide there the top 10 jurisdictions at the moment, and we are operational effectively in 6 of them across our business. We have a global business. You would expect us, if we're serious in mining, to focus on jurisdictions where mining is welcomed, where there is lots of support, there's lots of infrastructure, and there's a real possibility to develop major metal discoveries. We're also focused, if you look at our African operations, quite heavily on Botswana. Botswana is a jurisdiction I've been working in for quite a few years now, and you have security of tenure. There's a very supportive mining industry in there, and exploration industry. There's significant infrastructure and all the things that you need to do a thorough job. So we've spent a fair amount of our time and energy building our portfolio in Botswana. So it's not just about the metals, it's also about the jurisdictions and making sure we are operational in the right places for our business.
Well, Paul, thank you for that comprehensive overview of POW Metal Resources and the information that you've provided to our viewers over the past 4 days. Of course, the POW Metal Resources website has a lot of information that viewers can see, and I'm going to bring up a slide now which will cover some of what you can find there. Paul, perhaps I'll leave the last word to you.
Yeah, watch that front page of the website. That will change as the weeks go by, I'm sure. We are aspirational. I said that at the start. We want to build a major metals business focused in London and out of London on the main mining jurisdictions around the world. We're doing it innovatively in a way that will enable us to build substantial scale. But Alan, this is the junior resource space. It's a cyclical market. I've spent most of my life in cyclical markets. I used to work in insurance where the rates go up and down every 2 or 3 years. And we're in that space now. So I suspect we'll be in for a major run in the junior mining space as the metal prices continue to strengthen. We may well have a few shocks along the way with the general economic climate being a little bit volatile. But I'm sure even if the world did crumble in the financial markets, the metal space, as usual, will fire out and be the phoenix rising from the ashes quite quickly. So I'm confident in that. But I do know that cyclicity in the market means this is never going to be a major long-term business for the juniors. You know, the only chance you give yourself to be in business properly in 10 years' time is to build scale, size, and almost be irreplaceable. You look at some of the big companies that have emerged in our space, the Glencores of this world, they've done so with a fair amount of challenge on the way by going and becoming major players. And this is what we have to do as a company. Increase our strength, diversify our business, find more major discoveries, build our asset base, become almost irreplaceable in the market. And when I say life-changing on that front page screenshot you've got there, I'm talking about not just Power Metal shareholders or the company itself. I'm talking about the jurisdictions in which we operate, the communities with which we work, and the people in those communities who help us and assist us and become the team members of the business out in the field. Everyone has to benefit from the work that we do. Not just the company and not just the shareholders. So we're very focused on that as well. So watch our story, Alan. I know we'll have more of these interviews and discussions where I rabbit on at you. There's a passion and drive in this business. There are people, 9 of us in this business now working at this, incredibly talented people, geologists, accountants, general business management, marketing and communications, accounting and finance, everything you want, all within the company. I think the 2022 period will be fascinating for this company.
As you know, Paul, I have a great interest in the mining sector, and I'm really excited about what's going to happen this year. I think for Power Metal Resources, but also the companies you're spinning out too. I wish you every success for this year.
Thank you very much, Alan.